Welcome to the Tuesday Review. I'm Nathan, and as always, joined by Callum and James in the studio. How you going, guys?
Good, how are you?
Good. It's a big week on the show. We are talking Mortal Kombat this week. We're doing the dance moves in the studio.
Oh, yeah. So good.
We're talking the new one. But we also have some thoughts,
we will talk about the entire franchise.
Especially the 1995 classic. And it's stellar. I'm dripping with sarcasm. Stellar follow-up. Mortal Kombat Annihilation.
So I want to get to spoilers straight away. But
it's Mortal Kombat, man.
Yeah, I know.
Spoiler warning.
Yeah, no.
It's
but
Mortal
what
Kombat.
I was gonna say is, if you're listening to this and for some reason you're using our review to decide whether to see the movie, I would say no, it's terrible. Don't watch it.
It's good. Go see it.
Nathan would say it's a bit of fun. Give it a go. And I think Callum would probably more agree with me. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Okay, so now having said that, full spoilers for the new Mortal Kombat movie and mild spoilers for the entire franchise. But you're not going to be completely spoiled by anything we say.
Being realistic, if you've seen the first Mortal Kombat movie in 1995, the new one's not going to be.
If you know the general idea,
if you know the general of Mortal Kombat,
but like
as a movie franchise,
we will talk about things that aren't in the trailer or whatever, you know.
Yeah, but it's like I feel like
we will
spoilers
give away
for
very specific things.
Spoilers for this movie, maybe as much a deal breaker as spoilers for another movie.
Oh yeah, but I always like to say spoiler warning just in case.
Just in general, if you're on the fence and you're a little worried about spoilers, it's the kind of movie where spoilers aren't as big a deal as some other films. Except maybe at the end.
The amount of detail we'll go in, because there's a lot I want to talk about. Spoilers, I think, will matter in this context. But anyway, we're rambling about spoilers. Also, rant warning, because I hated this movie, and so I'm sorry, but this whole episode is just going to be me ranting. And let's start with my rant. Wind it back to the beginning. I'm a huge Mortal Kombat fan. I love Mortal Kombat. I still remember the first time I played it. I don't remember how old I was, but I was pretty young. And we played it at my friend's house. His older brother had it. I think it was on Sega Genesis. And we played it, and it was awesome.
Was it one of those forbidden games? Like they wouldn't let you play it. It was too bloodthirsty, too violent.
I was too young to remember the outrage. Because remember when it came out, video games were still primitive enough. If that's the right word.
And this was a realistic looking game.
And this was, quote unquote, realistic looking people getting horribly, horribly murdered, blood everywhere. It was super gory. And it was still at a time where, like, you know, there was like religious groups against video games, which much like there is now, because
I was going to say, what's changed? Yeah.
But, looking back on it now, I was like, does it look realistic at all? And it's very tame in its violence. But, at the time, there was a whole outrage.
Intense,
because, it was so violent, you could pull people's heads off.
And comparatively to everything else at the time, it kind of was.
At the time, it was, yeah.
I don't think there was anything more controversial than Mortal Kombat until Manhunt.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to think like games that were, like Nathan said, like forbidden.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Manhunt's the only thing I can think of. So that's just how extreme people viewed it back in the day.
Yeah, it was at the time, it was like the video game.
It was the naughty game.
Yeah, the naughty game. And I don't know, I don't remember the controversy surrounding it. I just remember falling in love with the game. But more importantly, I loved all the characters, and I loved the lore and the mythology behind it. And that's why I really like the series. And like I just always I'm wearing a Mortal Kombat t-shirt right now. You can't really see because of my hoodie, but I just love it. And then the 1995 Mortal Kombat movie came out.
Christopher Lambert's best movie.
No, it's not. Ghost Rider 2 is Christopher Lambert's best movie.
I will just say though, his really terrible performance in this movie is cheese, like B-movie magic.
Okay, so
and I know you have a lot of problems with it, but his laugh in particular, it's so terrible that I love it.
We'll talk about this later because it's something I want to go on rants about. But Raiden is my favorite character, and
he gets done dirty.
So like Christopher Lambert is the worst as Raiden, but as a cheesy B-movie riff tracks, like haha funny performance, it's pretty awesome.
His laugh it got me. It's in a special place in my heart.
Such a weird performance that he's doing.
It was like a fake laugh every single time. He was like, ha ha ha, and it's like straight face.
Yeah.
I'm like, I love it. It's terrible, but I love it.
Yeah. And the first Mortal Kombat movie is not a good movie. For one thing, it's PG-13, and so all the violence that the series is known for is not there. But you can see they kind of tried. They tried to get the story and the characters. It was
the guy that made Event Horizon.
Paul W.S. Anderson, who's generally not a good director except for Event Horizon. That's his one really good movie. But you can see they kind of tried.
Yeah.
And it's a fun, looking back on it now, it's one of those fun B-movie kind of experiences.
And it had a modest budget too. It was 18 at the time, maybe not so modest as
but it's still
today,
not a big budget
$18 million.
And it also has a dope soundtrack.
Yeah, the techno, Mortal
industrial
Kombat,
techno.
That theme song.
Yeah,
10,
still
they reused some of it for the new movie, didn't they?
Yeah, which we'll talk about how bad it is. So then they made the sequel, Mortal Kombat Annihilation, we'll
just skip over entirely.
Notoriously, probably one of the worst movies ever made. I don't know.
Is it U-Bowl level?
Oh, Uwe Boll, yes.
I suffered through this movie.
Actually, it's better, I would say. Okay. But it's still really bad.
I suffered through this movie in anticipation of this episode.
Yeah.
And Annihilation it's crap.
It's I was telling Nathan, because I got the 2-pack on Blu-ray, the original film and Annihilation, and I watched the original film and then put in Annihilation. Annihilation starts with this terrible fight, quote-unquote fight, because you can't even call it that, between Raiden and Shao Kahn. And it's like their heads and feet are cut off, and it looks like it's
like a weird cropping.
Yeah, it's
thing.
it looks like it's not supposed to be cropped like that.
Yeah. And
then the background effects for the sky, because the sky has gone all red or blue and weird colors, purpley. It's all pixelated.
Yeah.
And I was like, is there something wrong with my disc? I had to stop the movie, check
disc
the disc.
right?
Yeah, I was like, is this scratched? And I had to look it up. I'm like, is this version of the film a bad transfer? I'm like, no, that's just how the movie is.
I watched it on stream. I paid $5 for this movie to rent it.
Oh, you rented it?
I rented it.
I mean, I bought it, so I can't say, but I was like, it must be on a streaming, but
it wasn't. I looked.
Oh god.
I can understand why. But I watched the whole movie and I'm like, something's off, and I realized it's like it's either zoomed or cropped.
It's so weird.
It's just odd. It's weird. Callum, you're watching the whole movie and there's all this choreographed fighting going on, and you're only seeing
it looks like they shot it normally and then someone cut off the top and bottom and sides.
Or maybe they thought they were being cutting edge. You know what I mean?
I think it was
but it's just like you're seeing. I'm just like, there must be a whole lot of stuff going on outside the fight.
My theory was that there was a whole bunch of different directors, a whole bunch of different cinematographers, a whole bunch of different producers and writers who were they were constantly firing people. And I haven't I read the trivia and it didn't say anything like that. Yeah. But I feel like it's one of those movies where there was no real vision, or it was just a cheap studio.
As you said, at least in the first one, you can see they tried. You know? It's shot like a movie.
There is, exactly.
It's shot like a film.
Yeah, there is some presentation level. Yeah,
this one's not shot like a film.
But then what's weird is
the CG is goddamn terrible.
But the weird thing is then there are moments in Annihilation where you're like, oh, this kind of just looks like the first movie again. It looks okay. It's such a weird movie.
There's a scene in it's in some sort of desert, and it's I'm like,
there's a temple, and you're like, oh, they actually went to a place for that. That's cool.
That could be from the first movie. And it's no, we're back to B movie cheesy lines and really bad B movie special effects and really bad B movie principal photography.
But they're both fun. They're both fun in this kind of riff tracks kind of so bad they're good kind of way. And then they were supposed to make a third movie, but the second movie did so poorly, and it had double the budget, man. Which I can't believe that. I honestly,
so the first movie had a budget of 18 million. The second movie had a budget of 40.
I honestly can't.
Where did it? I sent a message to you. I sent a message to James when I'm watching it. I'm like, this movie has a budget of $40 million. $39 million went to cocaine.
Yeah, 39. No. Yeah, exactly.
It absolutely lined the pockets of some people.
Probably, it was probably a
and special effects.
Yeah, a lot of Hollywood accounting going on. Yeah, but so bad. But anyway, They were going to do a third one, but the second one did so poorly that it never came out. The game series continued on and was always...
with much success.
Yeah, was always, successful, or at least, was always a topic of conversation. Then they made... so this guy, I forget his name, Kevin something. He made like a fan film on YouTube. He was a filmmaker.
I think I remember
Yeah,
this.
right. And it was called Mortal Kombat Rebirth. And it was like a darker, gritty, violent, more grounded take on the Mortal Kombat universe. And it got such a good reaction that Warner Brothers let him do like a series, like a web series, like little shorts like on the net.
Kevin Tancharoen? I'm butchering his
that.
surname.
Yeah. So
sorry, Kevin.
And sorry, Kev, big Kev. And like it was got such a good reaction that Warner Brothers actually let him do these like little web shorts, and he made a series called Mortal Kombat Legacy, which is really cool. Obviously, they didn't have very much money, and so it's very tight budget, but they do a lot of cool things to introduce the world of Mortal Kombat and introduce the characters' backstories. And then they made, and it got a good reaction, but Warner Brothers, I guess, didn't want to commit to a film, like an actual movie, because that was the point. It's like you do these web series and then get people excited and then do the big budget movie. But I guess because it would have been R-rated, Warner Brothers didn't want to spend the money, whatever. Then they made Legacy Part 2, which is like the second set of web series, which looked even better, and I really like, and it like introduces more of the characters and more of the lore and the world, and is quite faithful. But again, they didn't really... Nothing really came of it in terms of a big movie or a proper TV show or anything. And meanwhile, the games are still going. And then last year, they made an animated movie, Mortal Kombat Legends Scorpion's Revenge.
Which I saw on a streaming service, but I haven't watched it yet.
Watch it because it's really good. And we will talk about later how it just kind of gets all the elements right. For a like feature-length movie. Obviously, it's animated, so they can get away with a bit more, and they don't have to worry so much about the budget. But it's really good, and I really, really liked it. Then now we're at Mortal Kombat 2021, the new big-budget movies. Technically, the first live-action movie since Annihilation, because Legacy was a web series, and it's like people getting excited about it. I've been burned so many times before by many different properties, but being a big Mortal Kombat fan, I was like, no, it's not going to be good. It'll be PG-13, kiddie bullshit, whatever. Video game movies have a notoriously bad record. Wasn't getting excited about it.
They do, yeah.
Then the trailer comes out, and I'm like, this doesn't look terrible. That's very surprising. And then we started to hear things of like, well, the director's Australian and he's filming it in South Australia and he's trying to use as much locations and real places as possible. He's saying things like he doesn't like a lot of CGI, and he's trying to he says things like, we're going to have some of the best fight scenes you've ever seen on film, stuff like that. And I'm like, okay.
Press F to doubt, but okay.
Yeah, but...
press X to doubt, yeah.
Yeah, it's like maybe this will be okay at the very least. Yeah. And we were sitting in the cinema and the opening logos are coming up.
Well, I said to James,
and
before I started, I said to James, I'm excited.
Yeah, and I leaned over to Callum and I've crossed my fingers. I'm like, fingers crossed this is good because it looks like it might be.
And it started off pretty good too.
The first 5-10 minutes are really good.
Yeah, really good.
It shows the backstory of Scorpion and Sub-Zero and how they had a feud and Sub-Zero kills Scorpion.
And the cinematography is wonderful.
Yeah, and it's filmed in, I assume, some forest somewhere in South Australia. And it looks really nice and the colours are really nice. And I'm like, this because it costs around $55 million-ish.
Yeah.
Give or take. Which is not high budget.
Not for today's day.
Yeah, especially for such a movie like this where you got a lot of fantastical elements. But the start of the movie looked really good. And you got Hiroyuki Sanada, the Japanese actor playing Hanzo Hasashi, who becomes Scorpion. And he's an amazing actor. and it's like, all right, this is really cool, and they're speaking Japanese, and it's like looks authentic.
And Chinese.
No, well, that's what I was going to get to.
And they can't understand
then,
each other.
Yeah, no, but like that's what I was going to get to. It's like then Sub-Zero comes, Baihan or Bihan, they call him in the movie, played by Joe Taslim from The Raid, who's an amazing martial artist, and who gives a good performance in the movie. These two guys are the highlights of the movie, I think, except for Kano, which we'll get to. And it's like this like all this fight, like cool fighting and like super violent and like guys with samurai swords, and then Scorpion gets his wife's gardening tool and he turns it into his iconic spear, and he's like killing these guys, and then Bihan shows up, with the ice. He's got ice powers and it's got really cool fights. There was a bit of like weird like fast cutting, but it wasn't enough for me to be worried at this point in the film. And Bihan is Chinese and he's speaking Chinese, and the subtitles say like when they're speaking Chinese or when they're speaking Japanese. I'm like, this is cool. Like they're taking a lot of effort and care with this, and it's like this movie could be really good. And then Bihan kills Hanzo, and then Raiden, the Thunder God, comes as like this lightning crack. And Raiden, like I said, my favorite character.
Props to the lightning effects in this movie.
Yeah, Callum leans over and he's like, it's like the 80s effects. I love it.
It's
like that keyed in lightning.
Yeah, it's the best.
But it's like, and then he like, Raiden takes Hanzo's like one surviving child, and his eyes are glowing, and then he like teleports with the lightning, and then it says like Mortal Kombat on the screen, and I was like, wow, this movie could be great. And then it's all downhill from there.
Yeah. But we had an amazing 10 minutes.
Yeah, the opening scene, I'm pretty sure you can find the opening scene on YouTube,
they
uploaded
did. HBO
legally.
Max uploaded the first 7 minutes or something like that.
So just watch that, because then it's just, oh my God.
There are highlights though.
It was a strange film.
The biggest problem with this movie is the script is atrocious.
Yes, no, I read. So I was looking up because we talked about how horrible it was when we saw it.
Yeah,
and I saw someone on Twitter tweeted out how it's like a fan movie, and it's like so the main character in this film is a gentleman called Cole Young.
Yeah.
And he's not from the games. He's a character they created for the film.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, we've already said full spoilers, so just everyone in the Mortal Kombat universe has a special power.
Yeah.
And so,
if you want to get into that, then
I was just gonna say, like, and
we'll get to that later. Actually, can you hold off on that, because this brings up a good point. This movie, you know how, Callum, you always say it, but it's something that's very true. Is we watch these big budget movies or these mainstream theatrical release films, and we're like, was this written by a first year film student? Like, what is this? And this definitely feels that. It's like so amateurish.
It feels like a fan script.
Yeah, it feels like a fan script. And part of that is the main character, Cole Young, who, like you said, is an original character, not from the games. Why do that? You've got a roster of like over 100 characters.
Right. The comment that made me laugh was, it feels like a self-insertion into a fan script.
Yeah.
So like there's some like guy
the writer
sitting at home.
Like,
he's like, and then some guy in real life called Cole Young, and he's like, and then the protagonist, Cole Young.
Yeah.
And I'm like...
And it's like, that's not so much a problem if you have a good character. But he's not a good character. He's a blank slate. He's a wooden...
Yeah.
Like, and no problem with the actor. The actor did fine, and he did good with the martial arts scenes. But that character is not interesting at all.
Yeah, very generic. It's like default. You know what I mean?
You've got this,
and they have enough interesting characters that they shouldn't have to create
roster of characters. Yeah. It's like, just pick any one of them. Now, I've heard that the studio wanted a audience insert character.
Yeah, that's what I was.
Which is stupid, because it's like, well, why couldn't that be Johnny Cage? Or why couldn't that be Liu Kang?
Yeah, exactly.
Or why couldn't that be Sonya Blade?
Pick any of them. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, pick any of
you're rebooting a movie
fighters.
You're rebooting a movie franchise, right? You can start with anyone. It doesn't matter who you pick.
So it's like, like in terms of like, the movie needs to be completely rewritten from the beginning.
But there's no amount of checks you can send us or fix this film.
Send us all the checks, but we're gonna have to rewrite the film page one. But like if you kept the movie roughly the same and turn Cole Young into Johnny Cage, you can still have a character who's the audience, like, what's going on kind of guy.
Yeah, the outsider going
like
in.
Like he is in the 95 movie, or like he is in the Scorpion's Revenge animated movie. Like, you don't need to invent a whole new character just to have a character be the audience surrogate.
Because all that is, right, is like the outsider who gets pulled into the other place, right?
Yeah.
That's like the person who has no idea suddenly has to be involved with things.
And it's like, this is like, it's not even a Mortal Kombat movie. It's like the Mortal Kombat Origins movie. Like,
it's a prologue film,
They don't even get to the
tournament, yeah.
Right? So it's like, well, in that case, aren't all the characters insert for the
except Raiden.
Audience?
Except
for
Raiden, Liu Kang.
And But even Liu Kang, like, Liu Kang could have just been like more like the 95 movie version, where he's a little bit less knowledgeable about things. And so he still has to be introduced to this
the only
world.
character from the Earth realm that you probably couldn't have would be Raiden, because he's a god.
Well,
and he
he's
sort
a
of
god,
knows
so he's not
everything
even
already.
from Earth realm, but he'd be the one who tells, like in the 95
he's the
movie,
supporting character.
Exactly, who tells the
he's
character,
the teacher,
So, like, you don't need that new character. Now, like, whether this was, like, forced upon them by the studio or whatever, that still doesn't explain the horrible, horrible other decisions made in the script. Like, the script is so bad that it makes any good bits in this movie not even worth the ticket price, or not worth the almost 2-hour running time, which is so long. And yet I felt like it was just like scene after quick scene, and all these characters that you don't really get introduced to.
Very minimal character development.
And like I said, you've got this huge roster of all these colorful characters, and they're all boring. And then you've got the main character who's the most boring. It's like, how do you make Mortal Kombat this boring?
Yeah. So one thing that I was excited for in this film was I kept seeing reports and like news articles and people talking about on the internet with like, it's set locations. They're going to, because this was made, well, a couple of years ago, I'm sure.
It was probably filmed in 2019.
Yeah. But it's like, so it's exciting to have a new movie come out that's all in like physical places. And we're always talking on this show about CG and, and they were talking about how they wanted to use minimal green screens.
And it's Australia, so it's like, oh, that's cool.
I was really pumped.
Industry,
I was really pumped for it.
Location.
And then it turns out that the locations were substandard by even the standards I had were much too high.
It's like, that wouldn't even be so much a problem if
the story was better.
If they utilized them better within the story. Because, like, they go to Outworld, which is another... that's another thing, right? If you don't know anything about Mortal Kombat, I feel like you'd be confused as hell watching this movie.
Yeah, a little bit.
Because, like, there's, like, a few, like, words at the beginning of the movie, like...
they've lost 8 out of 9 tournaments.
Yeah. And it's like... And then it just... And you're like... Wait, who are all these people? What's going on? What's this other... What? Who? Like Shang Tsung, the villain.
I was lucky. I was lucky. Like, I follow the games, but I would have had no idea. Like, if I didn't watch...
Like if you didn't rewatch...
If I didn't watch the 95 movie Annihilation, I would have been a bit more confused.
Yeah, like Shang Tsung, I'm like, if you didn't know anything, you'd be like, who's this guy? Like, they say his name once, I think. Like, he's just there kind of thing. And a lot of the other characters too.
So a lot of the internal locations I felt were very dark and like they were very.
Oh, that's another problem. Is after the great looking opening scene,
everything else looks bad.
Looks terrible.
And so like
and it gets really
it was all kind of like boring places, like a fight in a gym or a fight in like some type
of junkyard trailer. Park.
And then there's also like that place where Sub-Zero fights at some point. It's like an abandoned apartment
warehouse,
block thing.
Yeah.
And it's like just kind of really boring and bland. Yeah. And I'm like, you told me we were going places.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, in my mind, I'm like, they're going to the jungle. Yeah. They're going here. They're going there. It's like, no, we're going to a junkyard.
Yeah. It's like, obviously the budget wasn't huge.
Yeah.
But you know how last week we talked about if you don't have a huge budget and you have to do certain things, figure out where you can cut certain things and refocus that budget somewhere else.
Well, you had they used the forest spectacularly in the start. Why couldn't they use other nature outside locations?
So it's like like, if you can't show Outworld properly, like, maybe just show a glimpse of it and then set the movie somewhere. Like,
yeah,
they
exactly.
never, like, and actually that's another problem. The whole movie basically takes place in Raiden's temple, pretty much.
Yeah,
Almost.
a big chunk of it, yeah.
Which they get to Raiden's temple and they keep talking, and it's just a hill.
Yeah, they go into assault. They go to what looks to be some type of mine.
Yeah.
And it looks very much like a mine. It doesn't look like Raiden's temple. And then they do this thing where they open a door, and they're very clearly in a south stage now. I was just like, oh, come on.
And it's like, it's a very beautiful hill, but it's like they could have just CGI'd a temple there. Like, do something.
Like, we were talking about Lord of the Rings not too long ago, and their use of miniatures. They could have done something quick with miniatures. Like,
but it's like, then once they
temple.
get to the temple, it's like, is the temple really that important? And that brings me to, I'm sorry I'm rambling, going back and forth, but there's just so much to talk about, and my mind is racing. This movie is terrible. Like, they get to the temple, and then the whole movie just stops and becomes about them trying to unlock their inner power.
Yeah.
Which isn't in the games. They just made that up.
Yeah.
You don't need to explain that. They should just go to
the mark. The mark gives you power. Figure out how to use it.
The mark is not in from the games. Like, you don't need the mark. You don't need to explain these things. They should just go to the Outworld and be like, you have powers here. Okay.
Yeah.
Fine. Or like they do in the Legacy miniseries, the web series, where Raiden's just like, your natural abilities are enhanced here. And then they never talk about it again.
Or you could have just 5 minutes of Raiden, bestowing a power or doing something to bestow powers, and then that's done.
You don't need to spend like more than half the movie of them training to unlock their inner power, and then it unlocking willy-nilly, like out of nowhere, and then it being like stupid as hell.
Like it's a meter gene.
Yeah. And that's another problem which I want to talk about, where we talk a lot about, like, superhero movies are so prevalent now and so everywhere, and it's like
oversaturated.
They've changed the face of cinema.
Yeah. To
the point where movies like Star Wars now are just superhero movies. Like, they're no longer a different genre. Like, it's all about,
it's like sub-branches of superhero films. Yeah.
And this movie, I feel like, is just a superhero movie. Like, they're just like, there's a team and they have powers, and then they fight, and there's CGI things flying around the end. And I was just like, this movie would be so much better if superhero movies didn't exist, or if the filmmakers and writers like knew how to differentiate themselves from just making a generic superhero movie.
Forgive me for bringing up this film, but I was thinking about this yesterday, and Deathstalker, the original.
Yeah.
Now,
a good movie in comparison.
Yeah. So I was thinking about this, right, and I'm like, in a way, that's a fine Mortal Kombat film. Because he's a warrior, and granted, in this version, in Mortal Kombat, you'd have multiple warriors.
Yeah.
He finds out there's a tournament he needs to go to. Yeah. He goes to the tournament. But character development along the way. He fights in the tournament. There's a cheat or whatever. He overcomes it. He wins.
That's what's so disappointing about this movie, is that they thought they were being smart, or they thought they were being
subverting,
cool or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's like they never get to the tournament, and so they spend the whole movie talking about the tournament, and then, like, just kind of fighting around. Like,
from what I've read, their idea of the trilogy is this is pre-tournament, the second movie is tournament, third movie is post-tournament.
So another problem with this movie is,
this is assuming a trilogy comes to fruition.
If you wanted to do a pre-tournament like setup movie of all the characters, then just make it an origins movie and just introduce the characters and have some fights. Don't make it about the Outworld, quote-unquote, bad guy team.
Yeah.
Like, fudging the rules so that they can kill all the fighters before the tournament even starts, and therefore win by default.
The weird thing
is,
because if
you do that, you break the rules, and then the next movie, when the tournament does happen, you've already shown that the rules don't matter.
Yeah, exactly. The stakes, it's completely different.
But also, their idea about breaking the rules doesn't actually work, because when you kill one of the mark will go to someone else.
Yeah.
So it's like,
but if you're the fighter from the other side and you kill that, if you've got a mark and you kill the person with the mark, assumedly that mark disappears because it can't transfer to you unless it transfers to someone outside in another place in the world.
That's what I just assumed.
They don't explain any of that. And again, this mark, you don't need this mark.
No,
thing.
you don't. But the mark law in the movie kind of it's I guess what I inferred from the sort of the movie was that there always will be X number of people with the mark.
But then they should have set that up so that Shang Tsung's plan would never have worked. But then why would he even try that?
I understand you like the film.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not playing devil's avocado here. I'm just saying that in the movie, it's somewhat briefly explained that the mark is for like fighters that are chosen. So
what I'm saying is
the tournament has an official start. I agree with you. It's contradicting its own law.
Yeah. So
let's not try and try and straighten out this very messy narrative.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying
they've already set up that like the rules don't matter, the tournament doesn't matter. So if the next movie is about the tournament, it's like, well, who cares? Because
the tournament itself matters a lot because then Outworld will invade.
No, but we've already seen that Shang Tsung can cheat.
Yeah, exactly.
And that the elder gods
don't care.
The elder gods don't care, and the gods can interfere even though they're quote unquote not allowed.
Yeah, so that thing where Raiden was like, like, he's cheated, so I can cheat too a little bit now.
They've already broken all the rules, so the rules don't matter. So the next movie doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, like what can they do?
If this movie, like the original movie was just the tournament, and then the second movie was, well, they invade anyway, how did they break the rules? Well, it's because the Elder Gods, and that's a terrible movie. Annihilation is terrible. But that makes sense. The first movie should have just been the tournament. Then the movies coming off of that should have been, well, what happens else in this world? What else are they doing? What else other funny buggers are they doing in different realms? Don't start the first movie, break all the rules, and then pretend like, well, next movie everything just resets. No, you've already established that nothing matters.
Yeah, it's the Star Wars problem in a way, because you look at the Disney trilogy, they're like, well, you know, we're gonna do some really weird stuff with the first film.
Yeah, reset it every movie.
And then you're gonna have to see the next two films for it to pay off.
Yeah.
Well, you know, we've probably said this on the show.
Make the good first movie and then figure out what to do later.
The payoffs and the setup should happen in every movie.
Exactly.
They should all be able to stand on their own 2 feet as good films individually.
And this brings me to Raiden, who's my favorite Mortal Kombat character.
Before we get to Raiden, we'll take a quick break.
All right, cool.
You're back on the Tuesday review, talking everything Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, so...
And James is about to rant about Raiden.
Raiden is my favorite Mortal Kombat character. He's never been done justice in a live-action property. In the original film, he's played by Christopher Lambert, who's awesome, but is terrible as Raiden. And it's just one of those dodgy, weird B-movie performances.
But he's fake. He's fake.
Yeah, it's fun.
Bad acting laugh.
It's fun to watch him do a weird, like whatever weird thing he's doing. But it's not a good Raiden.
No.
Then Annihilation, James Remar, another amazing actor, but he's phoning it in. Like no one wants to be in that movie.
He's terrible,
and it's a terrible Raiden. Then the Mortal Kombat Legacy Season 1. They do this thing where even the director was like, I know this is going to be controversial, but it's just my kind of fan version of it. It's like Raiden is just a skinny white guy who like loses his powers and comes to Earth and gets put in a mental asylum because people don't believe that he's Raiden. And then at the end of the short, he gets his powers back and teleports. And I'm like, lame. Don't do crap like that.
They keep paxing my Raiden.
Yeah, pretty much. And then in Legacy 2, they recast it with an Asian actor, but he's just like a guy in a suit who explains the rules, and he's not really in it properly. In Scorpion's Revenge, it's animated, so it doesn't really count, but he's pretty cool in that because he's got the hat and the powers, and it's awesome. And finally, we get to the new movie, and I'm like, this could finally be a good live-action Raiden. Like, this is finally the version I want to see. My favorite character brought to life. And he's played by an awesome actor. I can't remember his name, but he was in Silence. He played the interpreter in Silence. And that guy was really awesome, right? But the way they interpret Raiden, and like they do in everything else in this movie, is just the worst. Like, yeah, he's got the hat, but other than that, he's just a boring, dull, flat character like all the other ones.
Tadanobu Asano.
Yeah, right? He's awesome, but he just ruins it. Like, the way they write Raiden is terrible. And it's like, Raiden is supposed to be the protector of Earthrealm. He's the god of thunder and lightning, and he likes humans, and he protects the Earthrealm. And he should gather the protectors of Earthrealm, the fighters, you know, train them, coach them, teach them, whatever. But in this movie, he just kind of makes fun of them and gets kind of a bit angry at them. And then he's like, I'm sorry, I can't interfere. I'm sorry, I can't interfere. Meanwhile, Shang Tsung is clearly interfering multiple times, and so the rules don't matter, and the Elder Gods are not doing anything. And he's like, sorry, I can't. Kung Lao gets killed horribly, and it's like, sorry, I can't do anything. And then at the very end, he's like, okay, maybe I can do something, and he like teleports them to a white room, I guess.
It's weird. It's like a realm in between realms.
Yeah, which again you don't need. And it's like if he could just teleport them everywhere anyway, and like if the bad guys are cheating all the time, like why not just teleport them somewhere, or why not teleport the bad guys somewhere? Like they don't set up the rules properly enough. Where it's like, well, the most powerful characters being Shang Tsung and Raiden in this version, if they're so powerful, they're literal gods. If they're so powerful, but they can interfere, then it defeats the purpose of the tournament and the fighters fighting. So you have to set up that rule of I can't interfere because there are larger powers at play. Yeah. There are the Elder Gods. They already get rid of that, and so Raiden becomes even more infuriating because it's like, well, he could have helped the whole time.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas if you establish that he wants to help but he can't, or that he can help but in little cheeky under the table ways.
Like it's a thing about like subtlety, right? It's like you're a teacher, you're a guide, you have to help in a way, but you can't break these rules.
Yeah.
And it would have been it would have been a better movie. It's like if they'd established
Scorpion's Revenge, the animated film, is so cool because Raiden, he can't technically interfere in the tournament, but if Shang Tsung does some shifty buggers, Raiden will step in. He does it in the 95 film where Shang Tsung sends all his like ninjas, like generic foot soldiers, and they're fighting, and like Raiden steps in, and he's like,
he stops it.
Look, you can't do this. Like, stop it, kind of thing. And he does it multiple times, and Raiden always stops it. You know, and they don't do that in this movie. This movie, Raiden just sits around his temple. And he's like making fun of... He puts up
a barrier being like, look, you can't get us now.
Which is that's some Marvel stuff right there. That's some superhero. I'm like, what is this? Like...
Really, he should have just blasted them out of the temple.
Exactly. And then the rest of the movie just basically takes place in this one fighting pit in Raiden's temple.
Yeah.
It's so boring. And I'm like, but you've already got that fighting pit. Why not just make this the tournament?
Yeah. Yeah, that's
like,
right.
Why did they have to go through like more than half the film of training when you could have just, this is the tournament now. Everyone, you're ready. Like, you're ready or you're not. It doesn't matter. Like, it's fight.
It has to go. Time's run out.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would have been cool too. Like if that could have built tension if there was a timer.
Yeah.
Like if above the pit, which you see sometimes, there's like a countdown or like a sand glass.
Hourglass.
Yeah, and then like they're all training desperately to get powerful or to learn what they need to learn for the story, and the time also, sometimes you can see the hourglass getting less and less.
This is another reason why the script is so terrible. You've got a game where all the characters are trained fighters.
Yeah.
So you don't have to introduce or have training montages or whatever. You just start the movie. All these people are experienced. They're experienced in different ways. Sonya and Jax are special forces soldiers. Liu Kang and Kung Lao are like monks or trained in martial arts.
Kano's just an all-round badass.
Yeah, Kano's like a mercenary. Johnny Cage is a martial artist and like a hotshot kind of movie actor, but he's like actually a good fighter. You've got
like Steven Seagal.
Yeah, he's actually based on Van Damme. But you've already got that set up. So just start the movie and be like, these guys are already badass, and Raiden comes and asks them or sort of pushes them towards like protecting Earth. Yeah. You don't need an hour of a movie explaining how they got superpowers.
Yeah, that's right.
And I know in the games it doesn't make sense. Like they want to explain how these big monsters and stuff and these normal humans have the same power level. But like I said, the Legacy miniseries does it well. They get to the other dimension. It's like your power, whatever natural ability you have, whatever powers you have, amplified here. And someone like Liu Kang, who has been training presumably since childhood, of course he can unlock his fire powers because he's been training for so long. Yeah. So in the first movie, you don't need to introduce Sonya's pink ring, purple ring fire, like power. You don't need, like, what?
Yeah.
Like, leave that. You don't need that ever. But if you are going to introduce that later after she's been fighting in the tournament for a while.
Yeah.
You know? Like, there are characters who you don't need to introduce that. Kung Lao, he has a spinny hat with a blade on it. Cool.
Yeah,
you know?
like, why does that have to be, like, a superpower?
Yeah.
He could just throw it or use it in combat.
Exactly.
With his martial arts.
It's like Jax's arms were just, like, cybernetic arms. Like, you don't need to explain that he got cybernetic arms because he believed in himself.
But that was even weirder because you got these really bad these really bad like iron arms. And then he transformed into having the cybernetic arms. Which is just strange.
So he got the mark before he lost his arms.
Yeah.
And then they give him the healers in Raiden's Temple give him the real, like, I don't know what you call them, the baby cybernetic arms. And then the mark activates before the mark, which he had before he lost his arms, activates to give him the beefy arms.
Yeah. So, like,
it makes no sense.
When Sub-Zero, like, freezes Jax's arms and, like, crunches them off, I'm like, this is awesome. This is a great way to introduce Jax's robot arms. Like, in the games, he loses his arm and he gets cybernetic arms from, like, the cybernetic government, program or whatever it is, right? But in this, because they introduced these stupid superpowers and that you have to unlock your inner power, they get to Raiden's Temple. So, one thing... sorry about this, everyone. But Sonya and Jax are, like, partners, special forces, like, buddies. And so Jax goes missing after fighting Sub-Zero. And they know he went to fight Sub-Zero and goes missing. But then they're like, oh, we better get to Raiden's Temple. And then they just forget about him. And then they get to the temple and Raiden's already there. Jax is already there. He's missing arms. And then they're like, Liu Kang's like, don't worry. Our healers can heal it. And they're in a, like, monk temple. But then they give him, like, little T-Rex cybernetic, like, metal arms. Weird. Which is so dumb. And I'm like... If they have that technology, why not give him the big arms anyway?
It would have just made more sense for them just to give him the big
arms. He has to earn the big arms.
And that's the thing, is because they've introduced these stupid superpowers that you have to unlock your inner ability.
It all has to be earned.
Yeah, his little arms don't do anything, but then he unlocks his inner power and his arms just grow into big robot arms. And I'm like, this is the stupidest movie I've ever seen. Like, who wrote this crap? Right? So
shame on you.
Like, you don't need these stupid powers. And then, like, I guess we should talk about Cole's superpower. So he's just this generic, boring... Yeah, powers. He's just boring, like...
This is why it's like fan fiction. It's like it's like if I write myself into story, you can guarantee I'm going to have the best powers.
Yeah, so it's like he's like just a boring MMA fighter, and he gets roped into this, and then he's
ex-champion, and he's lost his spark.
Yeah, and then he's like, I can't do this anymore, and he goes home. And I was like, this is so dumb. Like, I don't care about it. And he's like got a wife and a kid, which I thought was his little sister.
Yeah, so did I.
I was like, how old is he supposed to be?
I'm like, is he just like...
Did he have a kid when he was like 15?
Is he... I didn't look up the actor's age. I'm like, is he just a baby face? He's like, 40s or something?
I'm assuming you're not supposed to think about it too hard. Because it's the same.
Anyway, another mark against.
I'm like, is the mum coming to pick them up? I'm like,
because I actually thought there was a sister at first too. So right?
And then he goes, and then Goro comes, who's supposed to be the big, like, boss villain,
and they did it better in 1995.
Honestly, the dodgy Muppet version in the 95 version is cooler.
Yeah,
because at least it was like, oh, that's a cool Muppet.
It's a ripped dude with like a top half of it.
Yeah, it's like Muppet. Puppet. It's like two puppet arms, and then like a real guy, and then like animatronic head, and it doesn't look great, and it's very clunky. But it's. Cool,
I would have preferred that in this movie.
This version is just a big CGI. Like, he just looks like
he's
the
like
whole
12 feet tall.
Yeah, or he looks like one of the orcs from the Warcraft movie. You know, he's just that generic, boring CGI.
Oh yeah, that does look better. Wow.
Yeah, right.
The 95 version.
Also, Goro's supposed to be like this huge, like, undefeatable villain. Like, he's the one who won the previous tournaments for Outworld. And he's in this movie, he's just used as a generic henchman.
Yeah, obstacle.
And so he's sent to Cole, and Cole can't unleash his powers. And he tries to kill Cole, and then Cole unlocks his power, which is like gold Colossus armor around his torso and arms.
But it doesn't look like you'd expect it to look. It looks like the suit from the Darkness comics, which I'm sure no one's familiar with. But it has a really strange look that doesn't look like it's out of Mortal Kombat.
Wiry mesh
exactly.
type.
It's like wire gold.
Kind of
gold
like
wire,
organic-y, meshy kind of thing.
Aquaman-y type underwater armor.
It's weird and it doesn't. And so it's like, okay, he's got Colossus powers. You've just created this new power. You've just created this new dumb character that we don't need to introduce, but whatever, and you give him Colossus powers. Then Goros...
Yeah, I was sorry to interrupt you, but we were assuming that he was going to become Scorpion or he was going to have some other...
Actually, we'll talk about that in a sec,
I was like, we assumed that he was actually going to have a power we were familiar with, and that he was going to unlock it, and it was like, oh, look, he was X character all along.
Yeah. But it's like, so they give him this new power, which is like Colossus power. I'm like, okay, boring, whatever.
Like the suit's kinetic and absorbs energy.
Then Goro's punching him, and it's got like the kinetic power up from Black Panther's suit, like where you get punched or hit,
and you can like redirect that energy.
Redirects that energy back at the enemy. I'm like, okay, so he's got two powers. I'm like, and then he grows like nightstick blade things out of his arms. I'm like, what fanfic crap is this?
Yeah, that's right.
Like sure, you've already introduced the powers, which was dumb, but at least the other characters, their powers, they have one power and it corresponds with roughly what their power was in the game.
Yeah.
Now you've just created a new character and just give him a whole bunch of powers. Like, what the hell is this?
I know. Like,
a superhero movie fanfic, like with Mortal Kombat fan service.
You know what? The one thing I could say is if they were to have like a big franchise and then there's like multiple stages to powers that unlock as the movies go in the franchise, then you can understand by the fourth movie maybe each character can have a couple different powers, but he gets it like all at once.
That's what I was kind of saying at the beginning. I'm like, if you're gonna make the first movie, it's like just make it about the tournament and they have their base powers. Then if you want to go more with it, you can introduce that later. Like obviously as the games went on, they introduced more lore, more backstory, more power-ups, more fatalities, whatever. So why like cram all this crap into the beginning?
Yeah, into 20 minutes no less.
Yeah. And it's like you don't need any of this. Like you just have them show up and they have to fight to protect Earth. You know, like it's so dumb. All right, should we talk about Kano or Cole turning into Scorpion?
Let's address Cole turning into Scorpion first.
Okay, so
because we're on that.
So they show at the beginning that in feudal Japan, Scorpion's family's murdered except for his young daughter, baby daughter, and then Raiden takes the baby daughter, and then it's not revealed, and then later, during the movie, Cole, in present day, is having visions of like a fiery demon-like Scorpion, and
because reasons.
You find out that Cole is actually the last of Scorpion's bloodline. Yeah, like his surviving baby daughter grew up, and this is down the line has
he's the end result.
Cole is like here, so Scorpion was a Cole's ancient ancestor, right? So I'm like, I don't know if it was originally planned this way and the studio forced rewrites or they rewrote it themselves or whatever, but it seems like they might be setting up that Cole himself will channel or become Scorpion. Like his dead ancestor, like the spirit of revenge will manifest itself physically in Cole, which I don't like is not from the games. I was like, not really necessary, but that's a cool idea. The way you bring Scorpion back isn't actually making him a demon or like a spirit of vengeance, but is like his bloodline brings it out. I'm like, that's an interesting idea. Instead, what they do is they introduce he learns that he's actually Scorpion's ancestor, and that's like Scorpion. Does he even know Scorpion's in hell?
No.
But then
it might have been mentioned briefly.
Yeah. Then someone finds Scorpion's spear, which still has Scorpion's blood on it from where Sub-Zero stabbed him with it, and then Cole cuts himself, and his blood, I guess, mixes with
activates.
Yeah, and there's no there's no what's the word, like ceremony around this. There's no, there's no like shot of this. It's just it happens almost off screen. And I guess the mixture of those bloodlines brings Scorpion back from hell because reasons.
And then we get the line.
Well, actually, we get two lines. First, we get, I can't remember which order they come in, but we get the get over here, which is awesome. And I'm like, I'm down for this. And the fight between them is pretty cool. But then Scorpion really awkwardly in Japanese is like to Sub-Zero, like, I have returned from hell to destroy you. And I'm like, who wrote this movie? It sucked.
Yeah, it's just really awkward.
But this also...
I like that line just a little bit.
This ties... it does give you Annihilation vibes.
Yeah.
This ties into another problem where the start of the movie sets up the Sub-Zero Scorpion conflict.
Yeah.
But if you're not familiar with the games or the story, the backstory to the games, you're kind of like, who are these guys fighting? Why do they hate each other? And there's very like off the cuff, like because they're from different clans. But the movie doesn't really explain this.
No, very briefly. Yeah.
And so like Sub-Zero will say things like for the Lin Kuei, which is his clan.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the movie, when Scorpion gets his revenge and kills Sub-Zero, he's like for the Shirai Ryu, which is his clan. But if you don't know the backstory,
it's just babbling. Yeah.
And also, Sub-Zero killed Scorpion's family. Shouldn't he say, this is for my wife and child, and then kill Sub? Like, who cares about your clan at this point? Unless you're going to set the clan up.
You've been in hell for hundreds of years. Your clan doesn't exist anymore, buddy. It's just you now.
And so this sets up another problem where you start the movie where you set up like the revenge storyline. You set up the John Wick laser-focused motivation for Scorpion getting revenge on Sub-Zero. Then you don't see Scorpion for the whole movie until he's resurrected by Cole at the end to fight Sub-Zero. And then he kills him. And I'm like, so, and all the stuff in the middle, like we said, is nonsense. So it's like, well, you had a good movie. Either just make a Sub-Zero and Scorpion origin movie, which would have been awesome.
Yeah.
And clearly the best parts of this movie. Or have the through line of Scorpion's revenge, like the animated film, of actually even though there are the other ensemble characters and the tournament going on, it's actually Scorpion's revenge that is the through line and the emotional motivation throughout the film. Like, also, like, they don't explain how Sub-Zero can survive 500 years. I guess because he's got ice powers, it's in his blood or whatever,
my assumption was unholy magic from Outworld.
Yeah, I think they reference it very briefly. He made a deal with
Shang Tsung.
That's right. Yeah.
See, they really need to nail this stuff down because I didn't know. Like
it's forgettable stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one line in Outworld where he mentions a deal he did with Shang Tsung.
Yeah, it's very forgettable.
But it's like
it should be shown.
Yeah, it was shown or like just more explored, right? But what I hate is when you next see him, is he shows up to Shang Tsung's throne in Outworld, and Shang Tsung is like, Bi-Han, go and kill Scorpion or go and kill the Earthrealm fighters.
Yeah.
And he's like, I am not Bi-Han, I am Sub-Zero. And I'm like, who wrote this?
I know.
Are you telling me he spent 500 years going by the name Bi-Han and just now decided that he's Sub-Zero and then he needs to drop that name? Are you telling me you expect the audience is so dumb that they didn't know Bi-Han is Sub-Zero? If that's the case, you need to flesh that out, not just have the character called Bi-Han go, no, I'm actually called Sub-Zero.
Yeah.
Here's the certificate. I legally changed my name, Shang Tsung. I will sue you. Yeah. This is where
Sub-Zero Jones.
It'd be funny if he's like, I am Sub-Zero because I have ice powers.
Yeah. Like, this is another thing. They should have added another 5-10 minutes to the beginning, introduced the fact that Scorpion is called Scorpion because he already uses the spear as a weapon and he's become the most feared ninja in the realm. I shouldn't use realm because that in the place, what do you call them in Japan? Whatever.
Society.
There's a word for it.
Feudal structure.
Yeah, the shogunate or whatever. Yeah. That area of Japan, there's a word for it that I'm missing. Show that he's already called Scorpion. That's his nickname. But in reality, he's just a humble family man. you know?
Yeah.
Then you introduce the evil clan, Sub-Zero's clan, and he's called Sub-Zero obviously because he has ice powers and his family has ice powers. Also, they should introduce his brother who becomes Sub-Zero after Sub-Zero dies, because that's clearly what they're doing at the end of the film where he gets killed by Scorpion. And it's like in the games, Scorpion, Sub-Zero, original Sub-Zero gets killed and then is resurrected as Noob Saibot. And then his brother takes the mantle of Sub-Zero, right? So if they are planning 4 films, you can't just do the Annihilation thing where Sub-Zero rocks up and is like, I'm actually Sub-Zero's brother. Because that's lame as hell. That is the most crappy sequel thing you can do. But if you add another 5-10 minutes to the beginning of this movie and show Sub-Zero's clan and show his little brother, then automatically you've already got that set up. So when he shows up as Sub-Zero and taking the mantle, it's less of a, what a load of crap. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Also, in this way, you can introduce that Sub-Zero, the original, was the evil one who betrayed Scorpion and killed him, but his brother was more reasonable.
Yeah.
And so when Sub-Zero shows up in the next film,
he doesn't have to be a bad guy.
He's not the bad, or he's like an anti-hero kind of thing. And he might have to fight Sub-Zero, but then he might have to fight Scorpion, but then Scorpion's like, you're not your brother. And then if they are bringing the original Sub-Zero back as Noob Saibot, then you've already got that villain. You know? Like, there's so much stuff you can do. And there's a lot of nostalgia and fan service in this movie. But it's like, it's so poorly written and so poorly set out that it doesn't matter how many movies you've got. Like, this movie sucks so bad. I don't want them to make any more based on this.
But Kano was awesome.
Legitimately.
We'll get to Kano.
Look, we've complained about scripts for quite a few films, but this is legitimately one of the worst we've ever seen. Yeah. In terms of the actual screenplay.
No, this is
atrocious.
Truly terrible. Should we sign off and go off air? Because I have another hour's worth.
Well, the live show for the Tuesday review is now coming to a close. Thank you for listening. The podcast will continue.
More rants to come.
More rants to come. If you want to listen to the rest of our discussion, please listen to the podcast, which you can find on Shout Engine, iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Welcome back to the Tuesday review, continuing our discussion on Mortal Kombat.
Okay, so rant continued. I apologize for the frantic nature of this, but there's so much to talk about. So we'll talk about Kano, right? So in the original game, I assume Kano was just supposed to be American or whatever.
I just assume everyone's American.
Yeah.
In video games.
Oh, yeah. Unless they're from... But then the 1995 movie came out, and the actor who played Kano was English, and he gave him like a Cockney accent. And the creators of Mortal Kombat liked the portrayal so much, and they thought he was Australian. And so canonically...
That's racist.
Yeah, because Americans can't tell the difference between accents. So canonically, in the games, Kano became Aussie. But he's always... Because voice actors don't know how to do the Aussie accent, and actors rarely get it right. It's like he always just sounded kind of Cockney, so he's just basically just a Cockney guy for all the other adaptations and Legacy and whatever. And then this is the first time he's played by Josh Lawson, who's an Australian, and who gives him a really
and he hams it up.
Yeah.
Now, normally I hate seeing
cultural cringe is an issue.
Unfortunately, I hate seeing this for some reason. Call me, it's not very good. Yeah. But I don't like seeing Aussies in big Hollywood movies, because it makes me, for some reason, it makes me cringe. Yeah. I don't know. I can't say why.
It does depend on the context.
It's because half the time it's a bad stereotype example. Almost.
Or it's a non-Aussie actor trying to do a really bad accent.
I would feel that way about Kano, but I feel like his depiction of Bogans is actually fairly authentic, and I wasn't embarrassed.
It punches through that wall, and
I wasn't embarrassed at all.
What makes it great is because apparently just Josh Lawson was just improvising all these lines, and you can tell he's just having fun with it, and he's just talking shit and insulting people, and throwing stuff around and doing all sorts of fun stuff. And it's like he's the only character in the movie with any personality.
Yeah.
And that's probably because he wasn't going off of the script, you know?
Yeah.
And this is a problem I have. Two problems. One really quickly is in the games, he loses his eye and he gets like a cybernetic implant. Like Jax, he gets cybernetic arms. Kano gets a cybernetic implant. But because they introduce these power bullshit, it's like when he gets angry, his inner power is he has a laser eye. I'm like, lame, stupid. You don't need it. But anyway.
If he gets a second movie, he'll have a middle face.
Well, yeah, when he gets stabbed in the eye by Sonya, then it's like, yeah, obviously in the next movie they'll introduce, but it's dumb. Anyway, you don't need that. But so then on top of that, he's like an asshole to everyone, but he has all the funny lines and the quips and the insults. He's the only likable character, the only character with any personality, because they drain everyone else of any personality. And so he becomes like kind of the only likable one, even though he's supposed to be a villain. And this brings me to a big problem with the movie, is the bad guys are, evil, but other than Sub-Zero, none of them are like scary or threatening.
Yeah.
None of them really show themselves to be formidable opponents or like really truly evil. And it's like, if I'm not rooting for the Earth heroes and I'm not rooting for the bad guys, like it just becomes a really boring, dull film with a funny performance in the middle, which is Kano.
That's also true.
And it's like, if you cut Kano out, this movie would be unwatchable.
So, one of the problems I have with Kano is, now I'm not all that familiar with like the deeper Mortal Kombat lore, but they keep saying, oh, he was in charge of the Black Dragon.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, that's fine, but what is that? What does that mean? Why is that important? Why is it important enough to keep referring to it?
That's another problem. It's like, then they introduce Cabal, and he has this weird Brooklyn accent, and I'm like, what the hell is this? And then they're like, well, Cabal used to be in the Black Dragon with Kano, and then Kano, he got, put him in that iron lung.
We should have seen all this stuff.
What? You can't just drop this.
Like, why couldn't they have, when they find Kano, or if they found Kano, he should have been recruited from the Black Dragon. Do you know what I mean?
Or, like since this is the quote-unquote Origins movie, have him just be the leader of the Black Dragon, like, mercenary crime group, and don't have him have the metal eye.
Yeah.
And at the end of the movie, when Sonya stabs him, it's like, well, obviously he's going to come back in the sequel with the metal eye, the cybernetic eye. Or do the better thing, which is he just has the cybernetic eye at the start of the movie.
Yeah.
Because his Black Dragon is in cahoots with the Lin Kuei, Sub-Zero's faction, who are secretly working on cybernetic upgrades for their fighters.
That's a great idea.
Which is what happened in the game. And that's how you get characters like Sector and Cyrax, like cyborg characters.
Yeah.
And then when Jax loses his arms, you've already set up
that
this
cybernetic implants are
thing.
possible, yeah.
And then Jax can get his arms. And, you need to introduce that stuff. Like I was talking about how if you introduce Sub-Zero a bit more at the beginning and his brother and introduce the Lin Kuei a bit better, then you flash forward 500 years. It's like the Lin Kuei were ninjas and now they're like ninja robot, like
assassins.
They're
Black
security
Ops tech.
experts and they work at in-home security.
Not even that.
I'm just making the
You know what I'm saying, though? It's like they're an international terrorist organization.
Yeah.
Like Cobra and G.I. Joe or something.
Yeah.
Like they have...
a hand.
Yeah, exactly. They have all this... Actually, now you mention the hand, one of the problems with this movie is the bad guys. There's only the main bad guys, who are all like mostly CGI guys or like funny looking guys. There's no like foot soldiers or henchmen.
Yeah.
I like in the original film, it's like they're just like ninjas that show up, and it's like so they get to fight, so they get to flex their muscles, show off their moves. But it's like then those aren't the big main fights. Then when you get to the big main fights, that's when you show off your big CGI guys. That's when you show off your crazy characters.
Yeah.
Also, they do something where they get like they have bad guys who are just clearly there to be disposable.
Yeah.
Like they have Natara or whatever her name is, the wing demon lady, and I was like, well, she doesn't say anything. She's just there to die.
Yeah.
And then she swoops down on Kung Lao, and then he just like throws his hat at her and like saw blades her in half, and it's a really brutal, over the top, gory death,
Which is cool.
and it's cool, but it's also like
Pointless.
it's like she was just there to die. But on top of that, like, is Kung Lao a psychopath? And that brings me to a big problem with this movie, and not just in the writing, is the fatalities. Yeah, they're gory, and yeah, they pay homage to the game, and yeah, they're cool, but they come out of nowhere. The fatality in the game is the finishing move.
It's earned, you
beat the crap out of your opponent, and then right at the end, you get to do a finishing move on him, which in other fighting games is just whatever. But the special thing about Mortal Kombat...
It was over the top and brutal.
The fatality, the over-the-top, gory, brutal thing. And it's like, in this movie, it's like the fights aren't really that intense or violent, and they'll fight for a minute, and then there's a fatality where the good guy like dismembers the bad guy, and it's insane.
It's a problem with it's not a problem with Mortal Kombat, but it's also maybe a slight issue with transferring it over from game to movie because it's hard.
But the way to fix that is to set up the characters early on, set up who your good guys are, set up who your bad guys are, show your bad guys doing really bad things to normal everyday people. Yeah. Then show your bad guys beating the absolute crap out of your good guys to within an inch of their life.
Yeah, it's harder to...
Then flip the table, the good guy makes a comeback, and right at the end, to get revenge on the opponent who has we've seen kill civilians, we've seen kill innocents, we've seen beat the good guys.
You have that Creed-style comeback.
Exactly. And then you have that moment of like, not only am I going to kill you, but you're going to get it.
But
and then everyone gets in the cinema and cheers.
That's what I think they're missing about like ring combat is like you look at like the movies like Rocky and like I said Creed. It's like it's always that moment where you're not sure if they're going to win, but then they and the important thing it's in the tournament context. It's not just in an alley somewhere. It's in that the stakes are here. There are people watching. There's a team wins and a team loses based on the outcomes of these fights. And then the heroes get back up.
But in general, I'd say in something like Mortal Kombat with the brutal over-the-top violence, with the fatalities, it's harder to pull it off well and to earn it well and make your heroes not seem
impossible.
It's not impossible.
It's very possible.
It's very easy to make your heroes seem like psychos.
But it's part of the writing. It's part of the way the movie's shot and directed and the special effects. It's like the fatalities just come out of nowhere because there's very little violence in the actual fights themselves. It's only the fatalities.
There should have been a little more fighting first.
Yeah. Like when Goro is beating Cole, like he should be all bloodied and bruised, and like all you think he's.
You have
no
choice but to use the fatality to win.
Or just include more violence in the regular fightings.
Exactly, right?
And then it's less of a shock when it happens. But then that's also it could be a ratings issue. They could have been like.
And that's the thing is like this movie's gory and violent, but it's like if they were trying to not go so far overboard that the American rating systems give them an NC-17. It's like, well, then now we're in the problems of censorship, which we've talked about many times on the show before. And we're also at problems of like, you can't do this movie justice, even in a really gory R-rated movie. And that's kind of insane in 2021 when we should be able to just watch crazy violence on screen.
Needs to be Netflix. It needs to be a streaming movie instead.
But I still maintain you can do it well. You just have to put a little bit more.
It's harder to achieve, but you can do it.
Yeah. And it's also like the fights aren't that good.
No.
They're short, especially at the end when they're all intercut in between who's fighting, and it's like you don't really get a sense of like, well, who are these people?
Yeah, that end part was the most Marvel thing. I've seen in a non-Marvel movie.
And it's like there's enough like annoying shaky. There's not a lot of shaky cam, but there's enough of it where I was like, what are they doing? And there's a lot of quick cuts.
One thing we haven't mentioned that I think is really important is the bizarre narration. Like the
Oh, no. Okay, so that ties into another point I have, but let me finish about the fights, right? So the fights have some really cool shit in it. There's a moment where Sub-Zero stabs Scorpion, his blood squirts out his back, and then Sub-Zero freezes that blood squirt, grabs it as a knife and shoves it back into Scorpion.
Which was cool.
Awesome. There's a bit where Scorpion like drops it, like he's fighting Sub-Zero with his sword gets dropped or whatever. Scorpion like steps back, gets his spear thing on a rope and like grapples the sword and pulls it towards him, and in the process like cuts Sub-Zero with the sword as it's coming towards him and then catches it. It's really cool. Those moments are few and far between and only really happen at the beginning and end of the film when Sub-Zero and Scorpion are fighting. And those are the best parts of the movie. And in between those bits, all the fights are crap. There's CGI, there's the powers, dumb stuff, and there's shaky cam and quick cuts. There's several moments in this movie where a character will start throwing a punch towards an enemy. The camera will cut to another angle, and which is a very American style crap way of shooting action. Whereas, okay, you cut to another angle and then you show the impact. But there are multiple times in this movie where you cut to another angle as they're punching, and then the other angle doesn't show the impact of the fist. It just shows the enemy flying across the screen like he's already been hit.
Yeah.
It looks terrible. It's like this frenetic Taken 2 style action. It's just nonsense. So the fights aren't good enough to hold up
the film,
the movie. It's like not even fun to watch as a gory, over the top, movie. Then there's the fan service, which there are some really great moments of fan service. And it's like, oh, if you don't know the games, you miss it. It's like Marvel, they have that too. But Marvel also has likable characters and decent scripts for the most part. And these nostalgia fan service moments mean nothing, like kind of like the new Star Wars movie, if you just throw them in, like, look at this, look at that, and the rest of the movie is nonsense and dumb, and the characters are unlikable. And so one of the major problems with this fan service is the finishing narration, we'll call it. Where
Kano wins.
In the game...
Flawless victory.
Yeah, in the
so
game
weird.
it makes sense because they're at a tournament.
Yeah.
And he's got the announcer.
When you defeat the enemy, the announcer says fatality, Kano wins, whatever. But in the movie, they don't have the tournament. And so characters themselves just have to awkwardly say those lines. And it
makes them seem more like psychopaths.
Exactly, right? And a couple
like
of times...
when Kung Lao wins.
A couple of times it works. Like Kano saying Kano wins, it's like... Oh,
that's character.
Because he's got a big ego or whatever.
But Kung Lao's incident is weird.
Yeah. It's like Kung Lao like murders that demon lady with the wings. It's disgusting. It's like, what the hell?
And he's like, flawless victory.
Yeah, he's like, and it's like, what? That doesn't make sense. And the worst one, which Callum was referring to, the worst one is where Shang Tsung kills Kung Lao, and who was like Liu Kang's like adoptive brother. They grew up together, whatever. Which is not these characters show up near the middle to the end of the film, and just kind of like
explored.
We're here to help, and they're not good characters, whatever. And then Liu Kang is fighting Cabal, I think, who wasn't, who has been introduced 5 minutes beforehand as this weird, wisecracking Brooklyn guy with a mask, Predator mask. Weird. And he's fighting him. Oh, one thing, they really need to bring back the whole Bruce Lee shtick for Liu Kang. Because Liu Kang in the games is basically just Bruce Lee. Like, he has a similar look, similar moves. Like, he does that, that thing. And I know that's maybe not cool to do anymore or whatever, but they need to bring that shit back. It's awesome. They do it in the Scorpion's Revenge animated movie. It's awesome. But anyway, they don't do that, and Liu Kang's fighting Cabal, and then Liu Kang kills Cabal with his like fire thing, which the CGI isn't bad in that part, for a movie that's probably not the biggest
outside
budget.
of Goro. I feel like most of the CG was okay.
Not bad. Yeah,
there's some
it's
bad
okay.
moments, but yeah, most of it's okay. Yeah,
It's not egregious.
but yeah, he kills Cabal, and then off screen you don't see Liu Kang say this, so we assumed it was ADR'd in later. Liu Kang is like, fatality for Kung Lao. It's so awkward, makes zero sense.
I audibly laughed.
Yeah, and I was like, what the hell?
I literally giggled at that part. I
It's
was like,
insane. Like, this movie is the worst.
It still makes me
I
laugh.
remember Callum laughing. I'm like, Callum, be quiet, man. Like, we're in the
Yeah.
cinema. We're not at home.
I couldn't help it.
Yeah, no, there were multiple times where I was just like to Callum, like, who wrote this movie? What the hell? It's insane. Yeah, and like that's fan service that's so tone deaf or out of place. And it's like, well, if you're not going to have the tournament, you can't have the awkward announcer. You can't have the announcer, and if you can't have the announcer, you can't have the.
The only way I could see it possibly happening, and this is not a good way to look at it, is if Raiden kind of split himself to watch each fight, and
That'd
then
be
he was
kinda
like,
cool.
that person wins.
Well,
As like a spectator for the gods.
The 95 movie, just explain this, is that Shang Tsung just oversees the fights. And he's the one who says the announcements. It's like, that makes sense. It's like in the games.
But I'm like, they
doesn't
don't
make
do
sense.
anything like that.
Yeah, and Shang Tsung is also the bad guy. And so it makes sense for him to kind of relish in these defeats. Even if it's his own fighters getting killed.
Still blood
it
is
makes
being
sense
spilled.
for him to say fatality, you know?
Blood for the blood
Yeah.
god.
Like
and
the
all that.
95 version is not a good movie and is much better than this movie. It's insane. Like the music as well in this movie is constant. It never stops. And as a filmmaker, you have to know when is appropriate to have a score and when is not.
The director,
And-
he just previously made like ads and stuff.
Yeah, this is his first feature
So
film.
he's probably used to having music.
Yeah, but it's like
It's not an excuse. I'm
He-
just saying,
like,
in
he didn't
all of
even
his
do that.
previous past
like
work, he's
visually,
probably,
most of the movie is fine,
Yeah.
and like as a director, he didn't do a terrible job. But the script is so bad, and the decisions they made are so bad.
Yeah.
Well,
It's-
there is that saying, like a good director can make a. Well, what's that?
Oh yeah,
that motto?
Good director can make a bad script. No,
a
bad director can't make a good script.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I was trying to say. Yeah,
But anyway, like the music is just constant, and it's really annoying. It's not even good music. And it's like there are quiet moments in the film, and it's just constant.
I think like probably because he's just done like ads for TV. It's probably his first. It's his first feature, so he's probably not used to not having a score through the entire.
But
it's not an excuse.
It's a very big negative against
Yeah.
this film, and the score is not even good. And especially when you've got the original film and Annihilation, which have like cool techno soundtracks. Like you got to step up your game at least. And then they do something that's super cringeworthy, where at the end of on the end credits, they do a remix of the, Mortal Kombat
classic,
original
yeah.
theme, which would have been awesome, except it's a really awkward, cringy, early 2010s dubstep remix. And I'm like, who, like I kept saying, who made this movie? What the hell?
They could have at least done like an Old Town Road Little Nas X version. Gonna take my combat to the Old Town Outworld. I'm gonna fight till I can't no more.
Oh god, anything would have been better. No,
At least
it
we would have
just-
had a laugh.
It's just cringe. Like this movie is just like so. They made all the wrong decisions, and just crammed it into a movie. And we were talking during the break of like, there's so much exposition in this movie,
yeah.
and yet I was still like, if you haven't played the games, you wouldn't know what
Yeah.
the hell who any of these people
I've
are.
watched two of the movies and I have some experience with the games, but a lot of it, if I didn't prepare, I would
Yeah.
have had no idea what's going on.
Look, the whole as someone who's played a couple of the games, who hasn't watched the movies recently,
Yeah.
who's kind of forgotten most of it, I picked up on most of it just because I had that passive familiarity.
Yeah.
But like the Black Dragon stuff, I was kind of like, what's going on? I
Yeah.
don't get it. And it's like that thing, like it's like referencing old, like that kind of, we have a history, and I'm going to
Yeah.
reference the older history, but
And that's fine, but it's like he's
There's
in one
no-
scene and then he dies.
yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
what's-
It's not earned.
yeah.
Um,
And like having Jax and Sonya be the two people like who are least connected to the supernatural martial arts world, and yet they're the two characters who were investigating the marks,
yeah.
and it's like, why not? You're overthinking it. Just have Raiden show up to these different fighters and say, we need someone to protect
we
Earthrealm.
need you to help protect Earth.
Yeah, and
I've
then-
selected you.
And then whether they say yes or no, he just transports
Yeah,
them or
it's
something.
Raiden
you
being
know?
like, I have selected you.
yeah,
Deal with it.
yeah, you have been selected. And you
Yeah.
can even have the the mark being like a birthmark. It's like, well, you have been selected.
Or Raiden
from...
just zapping it onto people, being like, zap.
Yeah.
You are my chosen fighter. Zap.
Yeah. But like I said, that stuff's not necessary. But that's like, if you are going to do it, it's like, there's easier ways to do it, better ways to do it.
Look, at the end of the day, I mean, we've said this in this review already. It's ultimately a script issue. These guys were not prepared. I'm sorry, I don't know these guys obviously, but from what we've seen of this film, they weren't ready. They weren't prepared to make a big budget Hollywood film. Yeah. I think they need to go back to reading scripts. Look, coming from me, I'm an amateur myself, but I also wouldn't take the job to make a big Hollywood film if I wasn't.
Look, there
were 5 screenwriters for this movie.
Yeah,
two principal writers.
Okay, well, 2 principal writers.
But,
5
but like, there was probably a lot of studio meddling. But that still doesn't excuse the insane choices they made.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
And if Cole was forced on them by the studio, that is not an excuse for such a bland, boring character.
Yeah, and also
who has strange fanfic powers.
Yeah, the constant exposition, but it doesn't actually mean anything to the audience. Yeah. And this is not really the scriptwriter's fault, but like the bland direction in terms of the way they go to the different locations. Like they just hop on a plane and it's like a bogan lady's like, we're going to fly out there. And then I'm just like,
then
Jesus.
Through the desert. And it's like, you could cut all this out and just have Raiden transport them to the
you
temple.
don't need to catch a plane. Yeah. Like you have Raiden, like you said, the god, transport them. Or,
you know what?
A quick cut.
I think we said this after seeing the movie. Half an hour setting up the characters and their motivations.
Yep.
Half an hour of like getting to the tournament, Raiden explaining the rules,
a little bit of training or whatever,
training,
and then an hour for the tournament.
And then like half an hour for the tournament,
or an hour. If you want to cut in world building and character.
I'm just saying, as a 90-minute rough framework, obviously, it doesn't have to.
We're the kings of it's simple, just do it.
Yeah, but in this case it was because you've got the 1995 film.
Yeah,
which
have a
is
template.
just based
it's not Unknown Waters.
And I know they don't want to remake the original movie, but that's based on the games. It's and you already at a better place having. The first movie only had 2 games to go off.
Yeah.
This movie has like 30 years and 11 plus games to go off.
It's such a simple idea though.
Yeah.
It's not like there weren't tournament movies before Mortal Kombat either.
Just pick any tournament movie and
then adapt it
as a Mortal Kombat. Yeah, like it doesn't make sense that they were trying to be smart about it or trying to
subvert things.
And like I said, if they were trying to do the Origins movie before the tournament, you can't break all your rules in the first movie. You can't kill off certain characters. You can't like introduce these dumb powers.
Yeah.
Like just if you're going to do that, just introduce the characters mainly because that's more important, and then have the tournament in the second movie if that's what you want to do. But like I said, the first movie should have just been the tournament, and then the movies after should have been like, well, what's the ramifications? What's the aftermath? Shang Tsung and Outworld lost. Now they're going to do some shifty buggers.
Or like the alternative is if you did want to subvert things, you could have Earthrealm lose in the first film.
And then the second movie is like a post-apocalyptic.
Yeah, and it's like the fight to restore. Maybe they have to go to the gods and appeal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then there's like the journey through danger.
I like that movie, but that movie has a much higher budget.
Yeah, this is all theoretical.
Yeah, but if the first movie does well, then the second movie hopefully and presumably would get a higher budget anyway, which is I think what they're hoping for in this case. But I'm like, you still have to make the first one good.
Yeah, and they did.
And the first one with the same budget could have just been a good tournament movie. You already had the pieces there.
I wouldn't have even been mad if they started at the tournament. You know what I mean?
I was thinking that. I was like, you know how I always say I hate origin stories?
Yeah.
I'm like, you could...
Chances are, if you're going to see a Mortal Kombat movie, you're already probably relatively familiar with it.
You know what else we said? We were talking, Callum, after the movie, and we said you could have started the movie with the last tournament.
The 8th tournament losing, yeah.
The 9th tournament, like, Outworld defeats the last group of
competitors,
whatever the realm was. And then so you set the stakes.
Yeah.
And you see the invasion of that realm. And then introduce the characters. And then the Earth realm is next. And you introduce the Earth realm fighters, introduce them. then have the fight. And it's like the stakes are there, and we know what's going to happen.
You've already established things
Yeah.
for the audience, yeah.
And that's something, because in the games, one of the realms that Outworld Shao Kahn and Outworld conquers is Melina and Kitana's homeworld, Adenia, I think it's called. It's like, and they invade there, and that's how Shao Kahn adopts Kitana as a baby, who is actually the previous king's daughter. And he, like Thanos, he conquers a realm, and then he takes the child as his own and trains her.
Yeah.
And he then clones her and makes her sister, Melina, who is in the movie, the one with that weird cuts in her face. But why have Melina in this movie if you don't have Kitana? They're both very connected. And if you're going to have those characters, then you have to introduce the idea of Edenia, and like, even if you don't show it,
the ramifications,
you have to have Kitana, like in the original film, have to have Kitana come and be like, Shao Kahn, we lost the tournament and Shao Kahn was able to take over our
world.
realm,
Yeah.
and it was a beautiful green place, and now it's a horrible hellscape. Yeah. You need to set those stakes, and they don't do that in this movie. And you don't need a huge budget. Like I said, cut out some of the stuff that's in this movie, refocus.
Lots of the
other
meaningless exposition.
Yeah.
And
Goro, set up Goro for the sequel. Everyone in this movie should talk about Prince Goro's coming. Prince Goro's coming. Shao Kahn is mad that we're losing the tournament. He's going to send Prince Goro. And you see the statue of Prince Goro in that scene on Outworld. Don't have him in the movie because he just ends up being a henchman. Set him up as the guy maybe in the second movie. And in the movie we have like... Because Goro, what? He goes to
Cole's
house? Like, he's just a henchman. Like, you could have any Mortal Kombat character.
Yeah.
Have Baraka,
and at that point, Cole doesn't even... As far as the bad guys are concerned, Cole doesn't even have powers. So they're sending their biggest, baddest guy to fight audience replacement number one.
And like I
because
said...
Because the screenwriters are aware that he's gonna get powers.
Yeah. And like I said, these bad guys are just set up to die anyway. So it's like they're not given anything, and then it's like, and then they die. And I'm like, well, that's fine. That's kind of what Mortal Kombat's about. But it ties into like they're just doing it to set up another movie, perhaps that might be better and bigger budgeted later on. And I'm like, no, you have to make this movie good first.
Yeah.
And they do it like they do this weird thing where when the bad guys do die, it's in a way where it's like they can easily be resurrected. Like, it's really, really strange. I can't remember which character it is, but they shoot a hole through Melina, and it's like a clean hole.
But you see the
stomach,
spine.
Yeah, from her stomach through her back. But you can see her spine still intact, and it makes zero sense.
Yeah.
And I was like, they only did that so it's easier for them to bring her back in the sequel. But I'm like, it's a world of magic. You don't need that.
Yeah, just
She
have
also in the
what's his name,
lore-
the wizard dude, Shang
Shang Tsung.
Tsung, just have him magic
in
people
the lore in the lore of the games. Like, she's a clone anyway, so you can just bring her back. Also, like I just said a few minutes ago, like, if you're killing her off and then going to bring her back for the sequel, and then bring her sister in as well and bring in that backstory, it's like, why not just not have her in this film?
Yeah.
Leave her for the sequel if you're not going to do her justice. If you need another similar fighter, have Jade or someone. Like, you've got hundreds of characters to go off. It doesn't make any sense.
I know why I looked up this one of the screenwriter's filmography.
Yeah.
I know why.
Why? What happened?
Because his filmography is very questionable. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Any examples?
He wrote Doom.
You know what? This is probably a studio mandate where, like, we're making a video game movie. We need a guy who made a video game movie.
And this is why video game movies suck.
And that's why they all suck.
Because
they're not trying to make a good movie. They're trying to make a studio film that's like, well, we made video game movies before. Get that guy that did it once before.
It's weird because he also wrote Horseman, which was actually a good movie.
Horseman. Is that revenge movie?
No, it's the...
where he kills all those...
No, it's Dennis Quaid.
Yeah, doesn't he kill people who kill his family or something? But it's like a supernatural element.
Kind of.
Anyway,
But he also wrote, or his partner wrote, of Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings and the next Spider-Verse movie and the next Hercules movie. We'll see.
Yeah.
And he also wrote Godzilla 2014, Ant-Man,
Oh, I didn't
Zombieland,
like that
Double Tap, Wonder Woman 1984.
You know what? He like, no offense to the guy, I'm sure he's super cool and whatever, but he sounds like a guy a studio gets in to rewrite a script.
Yeah.
Sounds like just
He ticks the boxes for
Yeah.
the studios. Yeah.
he takes the studio notes and he implements them.
Yeah.
And yeah, like studio.
It's a studio meddled script basically.
But even then, like I said, that doesn't excuse the bad choices.
There's still a lot in there that had nothing to do with the studio.
Also, Shang Tsung, like I said, he's not introduced. Like, if you didn't know the previous movie or the games, you'd be like, who the hell is this guy? He's very weak and kind of understated, and it's really weird. And it's not till more than halfway past the movie, where he uses his powers to suck the soul out of someone.
And then Kung Lao.
Yeah, and that's later into the film.
Yeah.
And then he never really uses his powers again. And he does some teleportation with the black smoke. I'm like, you need to set that up at the beginning. Like, he's the guy who sucks the soul out. I like in the 95 version, which is very bloodless and not violent, and that's obviously a bad thing. But at least in that version, when the good guys sort of defeat their enemy in the ring, if they choose not to kill the
bad guys,
that's obviously just because of the PG rating, but also because the good guys are good guys. They're not going to murder a defenseless guy they've just beaten.
Not like in this movie.
Yeah, right. But then Shang Tsung comes and sucks their soul out. Your soul is mine. Like, that's cool. Set that up in this new movie. That makes so much more sense, and you can do it. And that
it explains why he's powerful too, because no matter what happens, he still gets extra power.
I think they even explain that in the 95 movie. It's like he gets his power from other people's souls.
Souls defeated. Yeah.
And in this movie, they just don't mention that, and then he sucks the soul, and then it's so. Also, this is a movie, like we said, all these characters are so boring and flat and one note. If you're gonna do a movie like this, it has to be a bit over the top and silly, sure. So the characters, especially like Shang Tsung and even Raiden,
they have to be a bit
big and a bit hamming it up a bit.
Yeah, like everyone should put in what Kano put into it.
Sort of, yeah. But I think Kano overpowers everyone else because everyone's so flat.
No, but I mean, everyone should have given the same amount of effort. All the
yeah.
other actors should have tried to meet his effort.
Also, another problem is Kano gives a sort of vibe of like what Johnny Cage would give. So it's like you've cut out a good guy to have a bad guy take up a similar sort of wise ass role, wisecracking role. But then he's the bad guy who gets killed anyway, and then you're leaving Johnny Cage for the sequel bait, which is bullshit, and I groaned at that.
But you know who wants to play Johnny Cage?
Who?
The Miz.
Oh no! Oh,
yeah,
no, that's
I reckon he's a
that's-
good fit.
Nah.
I reckon as a like.
no, it's appropriate.
No, I'm not in for it.
Nah.
Nah.
Who would you rather play the Miz?
Miz.
Who would you rather play Johnny Cage?
I don't know. I'd have to think about it. I think someone with like a Chris Pine sort of energy, like like really good looking, cocky kind of guy.
Yeah.
I do really like in Mortal Kombat Legacy, the second season, they get Casper Van Dien from Starship Troopers, and he's just so great. He's perfect, like that kind of, like really good looking guy. Like he was never really that famous.
But
and he's playing like a famous like action movie star who's a bit washed up. Yeah, just such a good choice. But yeah, like there's just so many bad choices in this movie and choices that they didn't need, and that like at the strength there are some cool bits, but it's not enough to make this enjoyable at all for me. And I was really disappointed because like I've got all the other stuff on Blu-ray, and I'm like, do I even want this movie? I'm like, maybe if I find it secondhand,
you do want it,
and it's like I kind of have to have it because I'm a completionist. But I'm like, I don't want to spend money. I felt like I wasted money on this movie. I was so disappointed, especially because we had that initial little bit of hope. And
The only movie I've ever felt that way about genuinely was Birds of Prey. Even with this film, I can't honestly say I was bored. So that's like, I'm not saying it's a good film. I'm just saying that, like, I think, like you said, it's like watching a train wreck in the sense that you can't look away. I wasn't bored because I was like, this is bizarre. What's going to happen next?
Exactly. I equated to it. It's like I was fascinated by how horrible it was. It was like watching a train wreck. I was like, it's terrible, but I can't look away. This is fascinating. I have to see where it goes next. But that doesn't mean it's good, and it doesn't mean I'll ever rewatch it again.
So in that sense, I think it was worth the price of admission, just because I it was nice to see an action movie at the cinemas, but it was good to actually see it and judge it the way it was intended, if that makes sense.
Two things. One, I like the fact that it's R-rated.
Yeah.
And like we talked about last week and a while before.
Lots of good old-fashioned swearing from Kano. He doesn't quite reach the level we all wanted.
We needed a C-bomb. He doesn't get there. Again, Americans are very prudish about these kind of things. You can have people's head explodes, but you can't have the C-bomb. It's less authentic Aussie that way. But, there's a good, fucking dickhead. And there's a good amount.
Yeah.
There's a good amount. Which is, Josh Lawson bringing that in.
Hey, he brought shitbox to the masses.
Oh, yeah. Giving that to the world. Yeah. So it's good because we always talk about we need these kind of lower mid-budget R-rated action movies like we did in the 80s and 90s. We don't have those anymore. We've had at least 3 this year that I can think of. So I guess that's kind of cool. The other thing is like, how we talked about how... Now I forgot what I was going to talk about. Shit. Oh, well, it doesn't matter. But it'll come to me as soon as we end the episode. But yeah, like this movie was just super disappointing. And like we deserve better. Like I still maintain we've never had a good video game movie. There are some I enjoy and are fun, but aren't good. The 95 version is much better than this version.
It's a curse.
I think I would put this on the same level as Annihilation.
Nah.
Whereas Annihilation has that kind of fun B-movie riff
Annihilation is offensive.
Oh, yeah.
In every single way.
It's one of the worst movies I've ever seen. But this movie was so mind-bogglingly terrible that I was just like, it's the same sort of, disappointment of like, what the hell were they doing? Yeah, no, I had much more to say, but I've forgotten it all, and I've ranted enough. So
yeah,
we'll wrap it up.
Weird film, don't recommend.
I'd softly do recommend.
Oh god,
thank you for listening, everybody. It's been a tough one this week.
Yeah,
you know the real fatalities, the audience.
Yeah, my wallet.
Yeah. Thank you for listening. You can catch us on the Spotify's, the Shout Engine, the iTunes, wherever you listen to
all
podcasts.
your podcasting apps.
Like, share, and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
Yeah, rate, review, and subscribe.
Ring the bell so you get
notified
when a new video comes out. Not that we have videos.
No, we don't have any videos.
All right. Thank you for listening, everybody. Adios, cousins.